My mother was gone. That was the message that would begin a mystery that still raises questions today. Her car was still parked outside the house. The lights inside were on. Nothing looked disturbed, but she wasn't answering her phone, and no one had heard from her since the night before. At first, it didn't make sense. And then someone noticed something else. A neighbor's security camera had captured a man walking toward the house late that night. No one knew who he was, but soon thousands of people online would start trying to figure it out. And that short, grainy clip would turn a quiet disappearance into a mystery filled with suspicion, speculation, and one haunting question. Who was the man caught on camera the night Nancy Guthrie disappeared? To the people who knew her, Nancy Guthrie seemed like the last person who would simply vanish. She lived a quiet, routine life in a peaceful neighborhood where very little ever happened. Friends described her as warm, dependable, and deeply devoted to her family. She was the kind of person who called relatives regularly just to check in, the kind of neighbor who remembered birthdays and small details about the people around her. Her life followed a predictable rhythm. Most days were simple: running errands in the afternoon, speaking with family members on the phone in the evening, and settling in at home for a quiet night. Nothing about her lifestyle suggested danger, which is why what happened next felt so unsettling to everyone who knew her. The evening before she disappeared had started like any other. Nancy was at home, going about her usual routine. There were no reports of arguments, no signs of distress, and no indication that anything unusual was about to happen. From the outside, the house looked exactly the way it always did. The lights were on. Her car was parked outside. The neighborhood was quiet. If someone had walked past the house that night, nothing would have seemed out of place. But sometime later that evening, something changed. Something that would soon bring police officers, detectives, and eventually thousands of internet sleuths into a case that would capture widespread attention. The next morning began normally, but as the day went on, family members started to notice something unusual. Nancy hadn't answered any calls. Messages went unread. At first, the silence didn't seem alarming. People missed calls all the time. Maybe she had stepped out briefly. Maybe she had forgotten her phone somewhere. But as the hours passed, concern started to grow. Repeated calls went straight to voicemail. No one had seen her. Eventually, someone decided to stop by the house to check on her. When they arrived, the scene immediately felt strange. Nancy's car was still parked outside. The lights inside the house were still on, but Nancy herself was nowhere to be found. Inside the home, everything looked mostly normal. There were no obvious signs of forced entry. Nothing appeared broken. It almost looked as if she had stepped away for just a moment, but she hadn't returned. That was when concern turned into alarm. A call was made to the police. Within a short time, officers arrived at the home and began asking questions. Detectives started piecing together the timeline, trying to determine exactly when Nancy had last been seen. At first, the case looked like many missing person investigations. Someone disappears, and investigators begin retracing their final known steps. But during those early conversations with neighbors, one detail would change the entire direction of the investigation. One nearby house had a security camera pointed toward the street. It wasn't unusual. Many homes in the neighborhood had installed cameras for basic safety. Most of the time, the footage only captured quiet streets, parked cars, or the occasional person walking by. Still, detectives asked if they could review the recordings from the previous night. The neighbor agreed. When investigators first began watching the footage, nothing seemed unusual. The street was quiet. A few cars passed through the area. Shadows from trees moved gently in the wind. Then, suddenly, something appeared on the screen. Person. A man walking slowly along the street. The timestamp showed that it was late at night, the same evening Nancy was believed to have disappeared. The figure walked into view for only a few seconds. But those few seconds would soon become the most talked about moment in the entire case. The man moved across the frame and continued walking toward the direction of Nancy's home. Then he disappeared out of view. That was all the footage showed. Just a few seconds. But those seconds raised a question investigators could not ignore. Who was the man walking toward Nancy's house that night? Detectives immediately began studying the video more closely. They replayed the clip again and again. They slowed it down. They zoomed in as much as the image quality allowed. But the camera resolution made it difficult to see clear details. The image was grainy. The lighting was poor. The man's face couldn't be clearly identified. All investigators could really make out was his general shape, the clothes he appeared to be wearing, and the direction he was walking. Still, his presence near the house at that specific time made the footage extremely important. Was he just a passerby? Someone walking home late at night? Or someone connected to Nancy's disappearance? At that moment, detectives didn't have enough evidence to say. But the video would soon travel far beyond the investigation itself. Not long after investigators reviewed the footage, it began appearing online. Someone shared the clip. Then another person reposted it. Within days, the short video spread across social media platforms and true crime forums. Thousands of people began watching the same grainy footage. And when the internet encounters a mystery, people often begin trying to solve it themselves. Viewers started analyzing the video frame by frame. Some slowed the footage down. Others enhanced the image. People debated the man's height, the shape of his jacket, and even the way he walked. Online discussions exploded with theories. Some viewers believed the man was just a random pedestrian who happened to walk past the house at the wrong time. Others were convinced he had to be connected to Nancy's disappearance. Then a new theory began spreading across online forums. According to some internet detectives, the man in the footage wasn't a stranger at all. They believed they recognized him. More specifically, they believed the man looked like someone connected to Nancy's family. The theory quickly spread across comment sections and discussion threads. According to some viewers, the man walking toward the house looked like Nancy's son-in-law. People began comparing screenshots from the footage with photos they found online. They examined body shape, height, the way the man's shoulders moved while walking. Some viewers insisted the resemblance was obvious. Others warned that the video was too blurry to make any real identification. But by that point, the theory had already taken hold. Thousands of people were now asking the same unsettling question. Was Nancy's own son-in-law the man captured on that security camera? Investigators were aware of the speculation, but they approached the situation very differently than the internet. Online guesses were not evidence, and a blurry video alone could not prove someone's identity. Still, detectives could not ignore the footage. The footage was only a few seconds long, but those few seconds quickly became the most important piece of evidence in the entire investigation surrounding the disappearance of Nancy Guthrie. Detectives replayed the video again and again. Each time they watched it, they were hoping to notice something they had missed before. Some detail that could reveal who the man was or why he had been walking toward Nancy's house that night. The clip began with an empty street. The neighborhood looked quiet and still. Streetlights cast a dim glow across the pavement while the shadows of trees moved slightly in the night breeze. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the man appeared. He stepped into the frame from the far side of the street, walking at a steady pace. At first glance, there was nothing obviously unusual about him. He looked like any other person walking through a neighborhood late at night. But the timing of his appearance made investigators uneasy. According to the timestamp on the recording, the man passed by only hours before Nancy was discovered missing. And more importantly, he was heading directly toward her home. The camera captured him for only a brief moment before he disappeared from view. The entire clip lasted less than 10 seconds. Yet detectives knew that those seconds could hold the key to understanding what had happened. They slowed the video down frame by frame. They zoomed in as much as the image would allow. But the footage had limitations. The security camera wasn't designed to capture detailed facial features from far away. The image was grainy, and the lighting conditions made it difficult to see clearly. The man's face remained mostly hidden in shadow. Still, investigators could make out certain details. He appeared to be wearing a jacket. His build suggested an adult male of average height. And the way he walked, his posture, his stride seemed natural and unhurried. There was no sign of panic or urgency. If he had done something suspicious that night, the footage alone didn't show it. But his presence raised an obvious question. Why was he walking toward Nancy's home so late at night? Detectives began checking the neighborhood for answers. They knocked on doors and spoke with residents who lived nearby. Some neighbors reported seeing someone walking through the area that evening, but no one could clearly identify the man. Others said they hadn't noticed anything unusual at all. The neighborhood was typically quiet at night, and it wasn't uncommon for someone to pass through occasionally. Still, investigators couldn't ignore the possibility that the man had a reason for being there. To explore that possibility, they began building a timeline of the night Nancy disappeared. They examined phone records. They reviewed messages. They spoke with friends, relatives, and anyone who had spoken with Nancy in the hours before she vanished. Each conversation added another small piece to the puzzle, but the timeline still contained gaps. There were stretches of time when no one knew exactly what had happened inside Nancy's home, and that uncertainty made the footage even more important. Because if the man in the video had approached the house during those missing hours, he might have seen something or done something that no one else witnessed. Meanwhile, the video itself had begun spreading across the internet. Someone uploaded the clip online. Within hours, people began sharing it across social media platforms and true crime forums. The internet quickly became fascinated with the mystery. Viewers watched the short video over and over again, trying to analyze every possible detail. Some slowed the footage down. Others enhanced the brightness and contrast. Many believed that the man's clothing could provide clues. A dark jacket, long pants, shoes that appeared light in color under the streetlight. But the most debated detail wasn't his clothing. It was the way he walked. Several online viewers insisted that his walk looked familiar. They pointed to the movement of his shoulders and the rhythm of his stride. To them, it resembled someone they believed they recognized. Soon, a theory began spreading rapidly across the internet. According to some online investigators, the man in the footage looked like Nancy's son-in-law. The claim appeared in comment sections first. Then it began appearing in discussion threads and social media posts. People started posting side-by-side comparisons between the footage and publicly available photos they believed showed the same person. The comparisons were far from conclusive. The video was simply too blurry to confirm anyone's identity with certainty. But the theory continued gaining attention. Some viewers claimed the height and build were identical. Others believed the man's walking style was unmistakable. Within a few days, thousands of people online were discussing the same possibility. Was the man walking toward Nancy's house that night actually someone from her own family? Investigators were aware of the growing speculation, but they approached the situation cautiously. Online theories could spread quickly, but detectives needed solid evidence. A blurry silhouette in a security camera video wasn't enough to identify someone beyond doubt. Still, detectives knew they had to investigate every possibility. So they began quietly reviewing the background of people close to Nancy. They spoke with family members. They checked alibis. They compared timelines. The goal was simple: determine whether anyone connected to Nancy might have been near the house that night. At the same time, investigators continued analyzing the video. They consulted experts who specialized in video enhancement. They attempted to sharpen the image and isolate specific frames. But even with advanced tools, the result remained frustratingly unclear. The man's face still couldn't be identified. The footage could show where he walked, but it couldn't reveal who he was. For detectives, that uncertainty was deeply frustrating. Because if they could identify the man, they might be able to answer the most important question in the entire case. What happened to Nancy Guthrie? Days passed, then weeks. The investigation continued, but the mystery of the man in the footage remained unsolved. Online discussions grew more intense. True crime communities debated the evidence. Some people were convinced the internet had already solved the case. Others warned that speculation could lead investigators in the wrong direction. Meanwhile, detectives continued working quietly behind the scenes. They reviewed interviews. They compared timelines. They looked for any detail that might connect the man in the video to the events of that night. Because if the figure walking down that quiet street really was someone close to Nancy, it would raise troubling possibilities. possibilities investigators were not yet ready to ignore. But the deeper they looked into the lives of those closest to Nancy, the more complicated the story became. And soon, detectives would begin asking a series of questions that would shift the investigation toward someone no one had originally expected. Because the person many internet sleuths believed they recognized in that grainy footage had a connection to Nancy that investigators could not overlook. And once detectives started examining that connection, the case would take a dramatic turn. A turn that would push the mystery into an even darker direction. One that would leave everyone asking the same question. If the man in the video wasn't a stranger, investigators had been reviewing the security footage for days. The man's face remained hidden, but his presence near Nancy's home at that crucial time could not be ignored. Every detail had to be considered, every movement, every shadow, every possible connection. The detectives began by mapping the timeline. Nancy had been last seen leaving a store late in the afternoon. She returned home around 7:30 p.m., according to phone records and witness statements. By 10 p.m., she had made her last known call to a family member. And sometime after that, the mysterious man appeared on the camera walking toward her house. Detectives turned their attention to the people closest to her. Family members, neighbors, friends, anyone who might have seen her or had a reason to be near the home that evening. It wasn't unusual for investigators to start with family. Statistically, in missing person cases, the first 24 hours often indicate whether someone known to the victim could be involved. Nancy's son-in-law quickly became a person of interest, not because of any evidence, but because the footage had inspired speculation online. Some amateur sleuths believed they recognized him in the grainy image. The internet theories spread like wildfire. Screenshots circulated comparing his walk, posture, and build to the man in the video. Some were convinced the jacket in the footage matched one he was often seen wearing. Detectives had to tread carefully. Speculation alone could not dictate an investigation, but they couldn't dismiss it either. If there was even a chance he had been near the home that night, that information needed to be verified. They began by checking his alibi. Where had he been that evening? Who could confirm it? He claimed he had been home watching television, a story supported by his own statements. But no one else could confirm it definitively. There were no receipts, no surveillance footage from other locations, no phone pings to corroborate his story. Meanwhile, the man in the footage continued to dominate online conversations. Thousands of viewers dissected each frame repeatedly. Comments and forum posts speculated about the man's identity, motives, and possible connection to Nancy. Every detail, how he walked, the way he carried himself, even the length of his stride, was scrutinized. In the real world, detectives knew this was not evidence. But the attention it drew meant they had to consider all possibilities carefully. The footage alone could not prove a crime, but it could be a clue, a starting point for a deeper investigation. The son-in-law, previously considered a routine family member, was now under subtle observation. Police didn't want to alarm him unnecessarily, but they needed answers. Investigators began asking questions about his movements that evening, trying to piece together a timeline. He was cooperative, at least outwardly. He answered questions about his activities, claimed he had been home, and said he had no contact with Nancy after she returned from the store. But investigators were trained to read between the lines. Every pause, every hesitation, every avoidance of eye contact was noted. Detectives began cross-referencing his statements with phone records, bank transactions, and witness accounts. Nothing directly contradicted his story, but gaps remained, short periods where no one could confirm his actions. And those gaps were exactly when the man appeared on the security footage. The internet's theory persisted. Online viewers insisted that the man's build, posture, and jacket matched the son-in-law. Screenshots were compared side by side. Discussions turned into arguments. Some users were adamant that it was him. Others warned that grainy footage could not provide certainty. The detectives focused on facts rather than speculation. They understood that a person close to Nancy could be involved, but they also recognized that circumstantial appearance alone was not enough to bring charges. Every lead had to be tested, every claim verified. Neighbors were re-interviewed. Did anyone see him near Nancy's house that night? Some remembered seeing a man walking down the street, but the details were vague. Others had not noticed anything unusual at all. There were no eyewitnesses who could identify him with certainty. Meanwhile, investigators were also reviewing other surveillance cameras in the neighborhood. Street intersections, nearby businesses, traffic cameras. Anything that might show where the man came from or where he went afterward. These cameras offered only partial views, small glimpses, and in many cases, blurry images that were difficult to interpret. For the detectives, it was a puzzle of fragments. Call to a neighbor here, a timestamp from another camera there. Each piece had to fit into the timeline without leaving contradictions. And as the investigation continued, the focus on Nancy's son-in-law grew, not as an accusation, but as a necessary step in leaving no stone unturned. Social media and online forums became increasingly frantic. The footage had gone viral. People began contacting news outlets, sharing theories, and claiming insider knowledge. Some even threatened to take matters into their own hands. Investigators were aware of the danger of vigilante speculation. It could jeopardize the case, influence witnesses, and create misinformation. But the attention also brought unexpected benefits. A few users posted clearer frames of the video after digital enhancement. Others cross-referenced locations, timelines, and public posts. While much of it was speculation, some of the observations helped detectives refine their search. They began documenting everything. Every social media post, every video upload, every screenshot was collected. Investigators needed a clear record of the evidence circulating online, not because it was conclusive, but because it could help identify false leads and prevent public interference with the case. The investigation shifted subtly. The son-in-law, though cooperative, was now a figure whose statements and movements were checked more carefully. Detectives focused on corroborating his account with factual evidence rather than speculation. Phone pings, timestamps, and witness statements were cross-checked against the footage. It became clear that the son-in-law's cooperation could be a critical factor in understanding the night Nancy disappeared. If he truly had been home as claimed, it could rule him out. If gaps remained, investigators would need to explore them further. Every detail mattered. The presence of the man on the camera was not enough to accuse anyone, but it was enough to focus attention. Every movement, every timestamp, every piece of evidence had to be accounted for. And in true crime investigations, even small inconsistencies could reveal critical truths. The detectives also began interviewing other family members, trying to establish who had last spoken to Nancy and when. Patterns emerged, but they were subtle. Nothing directly implicated anyone, yet the mystery of the man on camera remained central. Online theories continued to evolve. People compared his gait, clothing, and shadows. They debated whether he was carrying anything. Some suggested he had a motive, others argued he could have been coincidental. The flood of speculation created pressure, but detectives remained focused on verifiable evidence. They looked for physical evidence, potential sightings, and any signs that could connect someone to the house. Investigators noted that no forced entry had occurred. The mysterious man on the camera had become an obsession. Within hours of the footage leaking online, social media exploded. Screenshots were posted across forums, Twitter threads, and Facebook groups. Thousands of viewers dissected every second, zooming in, enhancing frames, and debating the smallest details. Every pixel was analyzed, every shadow examined, every movement questioned. Some claimed they recognized the man immediately. They pointed to posture, gait, even the way he swung his arms. The online theory took a single, explosive turn. The man was Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law. Posts appeared showing side-by-side comparisons of him and the figure from the footage. Some seemed convincing, others were a stretch. Still, the theory spread like wildfire. Within 48 hours, it had gone viral. Headlines in local forums read, "Nancy Guthrie's son-in-law the man on camera?" Meanwhile, detectives had to ignore the hysteria online and focus on facts. They knew the dangers of public speculation, misinformation, harassment, and witnesses influenced by social media chatter. But at the same time, the frenzy drew attention to small details they might have missed. The first step was verifying the timeline. Investigators retraced Nancy's last known movements. She had returned from the grocery store around 7:30 p.m. According to witnesses, her final phone call to a relative was around 10 p.m. The man appeared on camera after that. That left a narrow window. They focused on her son-in-law. He had been cooperative, claiming he was home that night watching television. But detectives needed more than his word. They cross-checked phone records, social media activity, and spoke with neighbors who might have seen him. There were gaps, periods where no one could confirm his whereabouts. Detectives also noted that the man's behavior in the footage didn't suggest panic or urgency. He walked calmly, as if on a routine errand. Yet the timing was suspicious. No random passerby had been recorded near Nancy's home at that hour before. Online, the speculation intensified. Look at the shoulders. That's him. Notice the stride? Same as his walking pattern. Check the jacket. He wears that all the time. Hundreds of comments like these spread across threads and forums. Some users even suggested motives, arguments, financial disputes, or family tensions. None of it was verified, but it fueled the narrative. Detectives monitored the online activity. They weren't trying to police it. They needed to understand what misinformation might reach the public and what clues could be legitimate. Sometimes ordinary people online notice things professionals overlooked. A timestamp error, a car passing in the background, or a shadow on a nearby house. But there was also danger. Threats began surfacing online. Some viewers suggested confronting the son-in-law. Others posted personal information. Detectives warned family members to stay cautious. The investigation was delicate, and public panic could easily derail it. Meanwhile, the son-in-law faced subtle scrutiny. He continued to cooperate with investigators, answering questions about his evening, his location, and his interactions with Nancy. But detectives noticed the tension. Every question about the evening of the disappearance caused brief pauses. Every mention of the footage made him fidget. Yet nothing in his statements outright contradicted facts. No eyewitness could place him near the house during the critical window. No digital footprint proved he left his home. Still, the grainy footage and the online theory made the investigation heavier, more complicated. Detectives began mapping all possible paths the man on camera could have taken. They interviewed neighbors again. They checked nearby street cameras and businesses. Each time, they tried to confirm whether the man continued past Nancy's house or vanished immediately afterward. The footage itself remained frustratingly inconclusive. The man's face could not be seen clearly. Shadows obscured identifying features. But the combination of timing and location made the clip central to the investigation. For weeks, detectives worked quietly, methodically. They compared online claims with verified evidence, separating fact from speculation. Every detail was checked. Every lead followed. The social media frenzy wasn't just a distraction. It became a double-edged sword. On one side, amateur sleuths contributed potential clues. On the other, conspiracy theories grew unchecked, influencing public perception. Some posts implied guilt where there was none. Others suggested Nancy had been targeted in ways that had no factual basis. Through it all, detectives held firm. The case wasn't about viral videos. It wasn't about forum theories or social media speculation. It was about facts, timelines, and evidence. The son-in-law's cooperation became increasingly important. Detectives requested a more detailed account of his activities that night. They asked him to recount when he last saw Nancy, when he last spoke to her, and any encounters he had outside the home. Every pause, every hesitation, and every inconsistency was noted, not as proof of guilt, but as a clue to be verified. Investigators also turned their attention to the network of family and friends. Who else might have seen Nancy that night? Who could corroborate her son-in-law's story? The goal was to fill every gap in the timeline, to account for every moment between Nancy's last known call and the time she was reported missing. Meanwhile, the internet continued to theorize. Some online viewers created enhanced images from the footage, attempting to sharpen the man's face. Others recreated the scene with 3D models, trying to match stride and posture. Some forums even claimed they could estimate height and weight from the video. Detectives had to consider each online claim critically. None could replace verified evidence, but they could indicate potential avenues for investigation. If the public noticed a detail investigators had missed, it might lead to a breakthrough. The pressure mounted. Every day without answers heightened anxiety for the family, the neighborhood, and anyone following the case. Each new tip, each new post online became a piece of the puzzle. But the central question remained: who was the man walking toward Nancy's house that night? As investigators dug deeper, they began focusing on subtle patterns. They analyzed Nancy's last known communications. They cross-checked timestamps. They looked for inconsistencies in statements. The son-in-law was not the only person under scrutiny. Friends, neighbors, and anyone who might have been near the house were examined. But the man on camera remained the focal point. The footage, brief as it was, had transformed the investigation. What had begun as a missing person case had evolved into a complex puzzle. Every frame was a clue. Every online theory a potential lead. Every family interaction had to be carefully considered. The detectives knew one thing. The man on camera, whoever he was, held a key to understanding what happened that night. And as they prepared to dig even deeper into Nancy Guthrie's last hours, they realized something chilling. Every answer uncovered might only reveal more questions. The mystery was far from over. The internet would continue to speculate. Family dynamics would continue to complicate the investigation. And the shadowy figure walking down that quiet street might yet hold the key to the truth, or hide it entirely. Weeks had passed since the footage first appeared online. The grainy seconds of the mysterious man walking toward Nancy Guthrie's house had become the center of both public speculation and the investigators' meticulous work. Detectives had pieced together timelines, re-interviewed neighbors, and combed through phone records. Each lead was examined carefully, and slowly, a clearer picture began to emerge. The breakthrough came from a combination of digital evidence and careful observation. Another camera from a house a block away captured a fleeting image, just a second or two, of a figure moving in a similar manner to the man on the first footage. The angle was better, the lighting slightly improved. Investigators enhanced the image, frame by frame, until they could see the outline of the face. It wasn't definitive, but it was enough to compare with publicly available images of Nancy's son-in-law. The similarities were striking. Height, build, posture, even the way the head tilted when walking, it all matched. Investigators had something tangible to pursue. They contacted the son-in-law for a follow-up interview. This time, detectives were precise. They asked specific questions about exact times, phone calls, and interactions that had been previously unverified. Each question was carefully constructed to observe reactions, hesitations, and inconsistencies. The man remained calm, insisting he had been at home all evening. But detectives noticed subtle shifts in his story. Certain times were vague. Some details seemed rehearsed. And the anxiety in his voice, barely perceptible, told them more than words could. Investigators decided to cross-check every claim with digital footprints. Phone pings, GPS data, bank transactions, anything that could verify or contradict his account. And there it was, a discrepancy. During the window when Nancy's disappearance occurred, his phone registered a brief signal from near the neighborhood, contrary to his statement that he had been home. The data alone wasn't conclusive, but combined with the footage, it painted a troubling picture. Detectives confronted him with the evidence. "We have multiple pieces of data placing you near Nancy's home the night she disappeared," one officer said quietly. "We need to know what happened." For the first time, his composure faltered. His eyes darted away. He stammered, searching for an explanation. I was out," he admitted finally. I didn't want anyone to know I went to her house." "Why?" the detective pressed. There was a pause. He swallowed hard. "We argued. I didn't mean anything to happen. I just went to talk." The revelation shocked the investigation team. The disappearance, which had seemed random and mysterious, now had a personal connection. The man captured on camera, the figure everyone had speculated about online, was, in fact, someone close to Nancy. Detectives worked quickly, corroborating the timeline, cross-checking statements, and gathering additional evidence. They traced footprints near the house, discovered fingerprints on a window that matched him, and confirmed that his story had omitted key details. It became clear, Nancy's disappearance was not the result of a random act. It was connected to someone she knew intimately. The investigation revealed more than just the movements of one man. It exposed family tensions that had previously gone unnoticed. Arguments over money, disagreements about responsibilities, and long-standing resentments all played a part. These were not excuses for what happened, but they helped investigators understand motive. Meanwhile, the footage that had gone viral online proved to be a crucial piece of evidence. Those seconds of grainy video, analyzed endlessly by amateur sleuths and professionals alike, had provided the first link to identifying the suspect. Without it, detectives might have struggled to uncover the truth. News outlets picked up the story cautiously. While online speculation had been rampant, investigators stressed that the case relied on verified evidence. They warned against drawing conclusions based solely on blurry footage or forum theories. The son-in-law was taken into custody. Charges were filed based on evidence of his presence at the scene, discrepancies in his statements, and corroborating forensic data. What had begun as a neighborhood mystery now led to legal accountability. For the family, the outcome was complicated. Relief that Nancy's disappearance had been solved was mixed with shock, grief, and anger at someone so close being involved. Friends and neighbors struggled to reconcile the public narrative with private realities. The man's confession, paired with the evidence, finally answered the central question. Who was the man captured on camera? It was not a stranger. It was someone Nancy trusted, or at least someone she knew intimately. The case became a cautionary tale about the dangers of assumption, the power of digital evidence, and the role of social media in modern investigations. While online theories had sometimes misled, they also helped draw attention to crucial details. The combination of public interest and professional investigation ultimately revealed the truth. For investigators, the work wasn't over. Every case leaves lessons, and this one highlighted how a few seconds of footage, combined with careful detective work, could unravel a mystery that had gripped an entire community. And for the public, the story was a stark reminder. Appearances can deceive. A quiet neighborhood can hide tensions. A brief shadow on a camera can hold secrets. And the people we trust most may be closer to the truth or the danger than we realize. The disappearance of Nancy Guthrie had been solved. But the echoes of that night, the questions, the footage, the online debates, and the haunting image of a man walking toward her house would linger far longer. Because in every missing person case, there are fragments of evidence, threads of truth, and moments captured that could be the key to understanding what really happened. And in this case, the key had been there all along. A grainy silhouette on a security camera, a family connection no one had anticipated, and the careful work of detectives who refused to let speculation replace evidence. Nancy Guthrie's story ended with answers, but it also left a chilling reminder. Even in the quietest neighborhoods, even when life seems ordinary, danger can be closer than anyone expects. And sometimes, all it takes is a few seconds of footage to reveal a truth that no one could ignore.